Now this video is going to go more into the jobs that subordinate clauses can do. So one of the jobs is they can be adjectives. And so this is going to be a subordinate clause acting like an adjective. And just like before, our key questions are which kind and which one. Now remember, subordinate clauses cannot contain the main subjects and verbs of the independent clause. So you need to use those kind of as your fences when you are looking. So when I'm looking at sentences, I initially go through and I mark my subject and verb pairs. Then I go back and try to determine which is the independent and which is the subordinate. So I am now reading this book, which is a historical novel about the Irish Revolt of 1798. Now, prep phrases can't contain subjects and verbs, so I'm just going to very lightly cross it off. They can be in a clause, but they can't contain those subjects and verbs. So it helps just eliminate what I'm looking for. So I have am reading, there's an action verb. Who or what am reading? Well, I am, and I am reading a book, direct object. I'm fairly interested by this comma, so I'm just going to mark that mentally, which is a historical novel. So I have linking verb, who or what is, which is. Historical novel, this is a predicate nominative, renaming which. Now clearly, I am now reading this book, can stand alone, which is about a historical novel about the Irish Revolt of 1798, can't, and this is telling me which book. So that makes it an adjective clause. In this case, that subordinating conjunction which has a grammatical function in the clause. So let's look at the next one. A photograph of those who had participated in the school's Earth Day celebration appeared on the front page of the local newspaper. So I'm going to get some of these prep phrases crossed off so they don't confuse me. And I'm easily left with much less to look at. So when I'm going through a photograph, who had participated appeared. So my first verb I find is had participated. Who or what had participated? Well, who had. Appeared is my next action verb. Who or what appeared? The photograph appeared. So there's my independent. A photograph is going to pair with appeared. Appeared where? On the front page. Which page? Of the local newspaper. So all of that goes together. Of those tells me which photograph. That leaves who had participated in the Earth Day celebration as my subordinate clause, telling me more about which those. Those is a pronoun. That makes this whole thing an adjective. Students who work part-time are excused early. There are no prep phrases here. So the first verb I find is work. Who or what work? In this case, it's who work. Are excused is my next verb I find. Who or what are excused? Students are excused. So when I think about it, this and when are they excused? They're excused early. All of that goes together as my independent, which means who work part-time, autofill, who work part-time is telling me more about which students. That makes it a subordinate adjective clause. Now, adjectives, whether they're clauses or single words or phrases, are not always necessary in a sentence. They can be essential or non-essential. And the cue for essential or non-essential are commas. And again, It's like we saw with the appositives. If I need it to make the sentence make sense, it is essential. If it's just extra information, it's non-essential. Again, the author of the sentence is the best determiner of that. So when I look at linking verb oboe, who or what is, oboe is what? Predicate nominative, instrument renames oboe. Here's one of those subordinate conjunctions. I can play, action verb. Who or what can play? I can play. So that I can play well is an adjective clause telling me more about instrument. In this case, I do need it because if I take it out, the oboe is the only instrument. Grammatically makes sense, but any meaning doesn't make sense. Well, what about the only instrument? What? That I can play well, that I don't know how to play, that I really love. We need more information. If you look at this next one, you can see who can play many instruments jumps out as non-essential because of those commas. And what we have is we have Emil taught me how to play the oboe. And it's just extra information that he can also play many other instruments. If I take that out, Emil taught me how to play the oboe, the spirit of the sentence is intact, and it's just bonus to know that he does play many other instruments. Now, relative pronouns are those introductory subordinating words. Who, whom, whose, which, and that. These are going to be your signposts, your keys that there's a clause coming. Isabel Baumfree was an abolitionist who is most often remembered as Sojourner Truth. Now, the clause here is who is most often remembered as Sojourner Truth clearly stands out as a subordinate clause. It can't stand on its own. Linking verb is, who or what is, who is. These are those words that are going to have a grammatical function in the clause. Is remembered predicate adjective. Your independent clause was, there's your linking verb, Isabella Baumfree, there's your subject, she was what, here's your predicate nominative. But who is often remembered, renames abolitionist adjective. The topic about which he is writing is controversial. First verb I find is writing. Who or what is writing? He is. Next one is again. There's a linking verb. Who or what is? In this case, the topic is. Here's one of our weird prepositions, about. Which is one of our relative pronouns. He is writing. The main clause here is the topic is controversial. Controversial is a predicate adjective describing the topic, and about which he is writing tells me which topic. She is the only person she is the person whom I trust most. There is that word whom, which is one of our clause relative pronoun introductory words, and it tells us more about which person. This word whom, I trust, whom is the object. It's the direct object of the verb trust. I trust whom. That's also why it's whom, because it's the objective case. Most is an adverb telling me to what degree I trust. Now when we get to questions, remember questions are going to be inverted, and you're going to want to be very careful that you get all of your pieces put together. So you do know the name of the group whose recording is the number one on the charts. So if I just lightly cross off my preps, so do know is action verb that I come across first. Who, you is the subject, you do know what. Name, direct object. Whose, there's one of my relative pronouns. Linking verb, Who or what is recording is, number 1 is going to be a predicate nominative renaming recording. All of this functions as an adjective telling me more about which group. In this case, the relative pronoun whose is acting like an adjective within the clause. Ms. Chung is the legislator whom we met. That whom is omitted. So here is my adjective clause telling me more about which legislator. So just like we talked about, the word that can be left off, sometimes those relative adjectives can also be left off. Now we can also introduce adjective clauses with relative adverbs, where, when, why, since, before. So don't assume that those words are automatically going to point to an adverb clause. You still have to look at what is the function in the sentence. Here is the spot where we will have lunch. Linking verb. Who or what is. Here is, it's a pronoun. Here is the spot, predicate nominative. Relative adverb, we, subject, will have. There's our action verb. What will we have? Lunch. Now in this case, where we will have lunch tells me more about spot. And since spot is a noun, that makes this an adjective, even though it's introduced by the word where. This is a season when it rains almost every day. There's that relative adverb. So linking verb, this pronoun, this is season, predicate nominative, it, my subject, action verb, rains almost every day. Tell me more about when it's raining. So here is my subordinate clause, when it rains every day, is still telling me more about season, season itself, which season, the one when it rains every day. That makes this an adjective clause. To continue just practicing with some of the examples, the quickest way, the architect designed a house that is made of steel and glass. Designed, action verb. Who or what designed? The architect designed what? House. Is made, here's another action verb. Who or what is made? That. In this case, the relative pronoun that happens to be telling me more about which house. This is the friend whom we met in New York. Whom we met in New York tells me more about which friend. This would be a great place to pause the video, try these on your own in your notes, and then come back. Early spring is the time of year when flash floods often occur. When is that relative adverb? So my attention is drawn to that. But if I go through and say linking verb, who or what is, spring is what, time, predicate nominative, renaming spring, of the year is a prep phrase. When flash floods often occur, here's my action verb. What occurs? Floods occur. So when flash floods occur tells me more about year or time. I could go with either one, but both of these are nouns, so this is still an adjective. The directions that she gives are always clear. Here's your clause. Which directions? The word that is omitted. The directions that she gives. Adjective clause renaming directions. Dave is a manager whose word is law. Whose word is law tells me